The bright Miami sun was setting over the horizon as Dr. Anna Lynn wheeled her small suitcase through the gleaming marble lobby of the Grand Palm Resort. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and despite her exhaustion from the long flight, her eyes sparkled with excitement about presenting her research at tomorrow's Ocean Conservation Conference. The hotel was far more luxurious than she was used to, with crystal chandeliers and gold-trimmed everything. As a 28-year-old marine biologist surviving mostly on research grants, she felt a bit out of place among the well-heeled guests. Still, the conference organizers had managed to get the attendees a special rate, making it just barely within her budget. Room 1542, she muttered to herself, checking her booking confirmation one more time as she stepped into the elevator. The gentle classical music playing inside was a stark contrast to the rock music she usually blasted in her lab while studying coral samples. Finding her floor, Anna dragged her suitcase down the plushed carpeted hallway, admiring the tropical-themed artwork on the walls. She was so absorbed in thoughts about tomorrow's presentation that she didn't notice the room numbers had jumped from 1530 to 1550. Jet-lagged and distracted, she inserted her keycard into what she thought was room 1542. The door clicked open, and Anna stepped inside, immediately freezing in her tracks. Instead of the standard hotel room she expected, she found herself in an enormous luxury suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the ocean, and elegant furniture filled the spacious living area. But what really made her heart stop was the man standing by the window, talking on his phone. He turned around, equally startled by her presence. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, wearing an expensive but casual sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, ending the call. "Can I help you?" Anna's face flushed bright red as she realized her mistake. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. I must have the wrong room. I was looking for 1542 and I'm here for the marine biology conference, and clearly this isn't my room, and I should go." She started backing toward the door, mortified. The man's expression softened into an amused smile. "Actually, you might be exactly where you need to be. I'm Robert Chen. I've been following your research on coral reef restoration." Anna's embarrassment was temporarily forgotten as surprise took over. "You know my work. Your papers on accelerated coral growth techniques are brilliant," he said, walking closer. "Especially your latest findings on heat-resistant species. I've been hoping to meet you at the conference." Now Anna was even more confused. This clearly wealthy man didn't look like any marine biologist she knew. "I'm sorry, but how do you?" "I probably should explain," he chuckled. "I run Novatech Solutions, but my real passion is ocean conservation. We've been quietly funding marine research projects around the world." Anna's eyes widened as she finally recognized him. Robert Chen wasn't just wealthy. He was a billionaire tech mogul who had largely disappeared from public view over the last few years. Rumors had circulated about everything from secret space projects to hidden islands, but here he was talking about coral reefs. "Please, sit down," he gestured to a comfortable-looking sofa. "Since you've accidentally found your way here, maybe we could discuss your work. I have some ideas about expanding your research scope." Still somewhat dazed, Anna perched on the edge of the sofa while Robert took a seat across from her. "I'd love to hear about your current project," he said warmly. As Anna began describing her work, her initial nervousness melted away. Robert asked intelligent questions that showed he truly understood the science, and his enthusiasm was genuine. She found herself sketching diagrams on hotel notepaper, explaining her theories about creating more resilient coral ecosystems. "The problem is funding," she admitted finally. "We've made incredible progress, but our current grant barely covers basic expenses. We need better equipment, more staff." "What if money wasn't an issue?" Robert asked quietly. "What could you accomplish with unlimited resources?" Anna's mind raced with possibilities. "We could scale up the nursery program, develop new cultivation techniques, maybe even start a global network of restoration sites." She stopped herself, realizing she was getting carried away, but Robert was nodding thoughtfully. "I've been looking for exactly this kind of project to support. Something with real potential to make a difference." He pulled out his phone and pulled up some files. I've actually been following similar research projects worldwide. Take a look at these results from the Pacific. As the evening wore on, the conversation flowed from science to personal stories. Robert described how his love for the ocean began during childhood summers spent snorkeling in Thailand, while Anna shared funny stories about her misadventures doing field research. Finally, glancing at her watch, Anna jumped up. "Oh no, it's so late. I still need to find my actual room and prepare for tomorrow's presentation." "Let me help you with that," Robert said, picking up his phone. Within minutes, he had sorted out the room confusion and arranged for her luggage to be taken to the correct room. As Anna prepared to leave, Robert held out his business card. "I'm serious about funding your research, Dr. Lin. Let's talk more after your presentation tomorrow." I think this accidental meeting could be the beginning of something extraordinary. Walking to her real room a few minutes later, Anna felt like she was floating. Had this really happened? She pulled out Robert's card, running her fingers over the embossed lettering. Sometimes the biggest opportunities in life come from the smallest mistakes, she thought, smiling to herself as she began planning tomorrow's presentation with renewed excitement. This chance encounter would turn out to be just the beginning of an amazing journey that would change not only her work, but her entire life in ways she never could have imagined. The morning sun streamed through the conference room windows as Anna finished her presentation. Her heart was racing, but she knew she'd nailed it. The audience's enthusiastic applause confirmed it, and several colleagues approached to congratulate her afterward. But her eyes kept drifting to the back of the room, where Robert Chen sat quietly observing everything. After the crowd thinned out, he made his way over, that same warm smile on his face from the previous evening. "Fantastic presentation," he said. "Even better than I expected. Would you join me for lunch? I have a proposal I'd like to discuss." They found a quiet corner in the hotel's oceanfront restaurant. Anna couldn't help but notice how Robert seemed perfectly at ease ordering for both of them when she mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the fancy menu. "Trust me," he said with a wink, "the chef here makes the best seafood risotto you'll ever taste." As they waited for their food, Robert pulled out his tablet and started showing her detailed plans. "I've been thinking about what you said last night about scaling up your research. I've had my team run some numbers, and I believe we could establish a major research facility right here in Miami." Anna nearly choked on her water. "A whole facility? Complete with state-of-the-art labs, cultivation tanks, and a full research staff," he continued. "You'd have complete scientific control. All I ask is that you consider incorporating some of the global data I've been collecting." The food arrived, and Anna had to admit the risotto was incredible. But her mind was spinning with possibilities. "This is overwhelming," she admitted. "Why me? There are many other researchers doing similar work." Robert set down his fork and looked at her thoughtfully. "Do you know what impressed me most about your presentation? It wasn't just the science. It was your passion. When you talked about saving the reefs, your whole face lit up. You didn't just present data, you told the story about hope for the future." Anna felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "The reefs are like underwater cities," she said softly. "They're home to countless species, and they're dying right in front of us. We can't just let that happen." "Exactly," Robert said, leaning forward. "But here's where it gets complicated. There's a resort development planned near your current research site. I've looked into it. They're going to destroy acres of healthy reef." Anna's heart sank. She'd heard rumors about the development, but hadn't realized how serious it was. "There has to be something we can do." "There is," Robert said, pulling up more documents on his tablet. "I've already had my legal team looking into it. We can challenge the environmental impact assessment, but we need solid data. That's where you come in." As he laid out the plan, Anna felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The proposed research facility would give her team the resources to document the reef's ecological importance comprehensively. But going up against powerful developers wouldn't be easy. "I know it's a lot to take in," Robert said gently, noticing her worried expression. "Sleep on it. Talk to your colleagues. I don't need an answer right away." But Anna surprised herself by shaking her head. "I don't need time. This is exactly what I've been working toward. If we can save even one reef system, it's worth any challenge." Robert's face broke into a genuine smile. "I hoped you'd say that. Now, let's talk specifics. They spent the next 2 hours sketching out plans, with Robert making calls to his team and Anna reaching out to her research partners. By the time they finished lunch, the basic framework was in place. As they walked back through the hotel lobby, Anna felt like she was walking on air. But a small doubt nagged at her. "Robert," she said, stopping suddenly, "why are you really doing this? You're a tech billionaire. Surely there are more profitable ways to spend your money." He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the ocean through the lobby's huge windows. "When I was building my company, I was so focused on success that I lost sight of what really mattered. It took a health scare 2 years ago to wake me up. I realized I wanted to leave a legacy that meant something. Money's just a tool. What matters is how you use it." Anna studied his face, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "Well," she said with a smile, "I think saving the ocean is a pretty good legacy." "It's just the beginning," he replied. "We're going to change the world, Dr. Lin, one reef at a time." As Anna walked back to her room to pack for her flight home, her phone buzzed with an email. Robert's team had already drawn up the initial contracts and research proposals. At the bottom was a personal note. "Thank you for accidentally walking into my suite last night. Some mistakes turn out to be destiny." Looking out at the ocean from her hotel room window, Anna felt a profound sense of hope. Tomorrow, she would return to her small lab for the last time, but everything was about to change. Sometimes the biggest dreams come true in the most unexpected ways, and she couldn't wait to see what the future held. 3 months after that fateful hotel meeting, Anna stood in her new research facility, still amazed by how quickly everything had come together. The state-of-the-art lab was unlike anything she ever worked in, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and equipment that most marine biologists only dreamed about. But today, the excitement was overshadowed by tension. Her team had gathered around the conference table, studying satellite images of their research site. The resort developers had moved up their timeline, and construction equipment was already being positioned near the reef. "They can't do this," said Tom, her assistant researcher, pointing to the images. "Our environmental impact study clearly shows the damage it would cause." Anna rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. "They're claiming our study is biased because of Robert's funding. They've hired their own experts who say the impact will be minimal." Just then, her phone buzzed with a message from Robert. "Turn on the news," it read. The team huddled around the large screen as the local news anchor reported on a developing controversy over the resort development. The coverage showed protesters gathering at the site, holding signs about saving the reef. But what made Anna's heart sink was the developer's spokesperson, painting their research team as puppets of a billionaire trying to control coastal development. "This is getting ugly," Anna murmured, just as Robert walked into the lab. He looked more serious than usual, his usual casual attire replaced by a formal suit. "I just came from a meeting with the development company's board," he said, loosening his tie. "They're not backing down. In fact, they're threatening to sue us for interfering with their project." The team exchanged worried glances, but Anna felt a surge of determination. "Then we'll fight back. We have the science on our side." Robert nodded, pulling up some documents on the lab's main screen. "I had my legal team prepare these. We're filing for an emergency injunction to stop construction while we conduct a more comprehensive study. But we need solid evidence, and we need it fast." The next few weeks became a blur of activity. Anna's team worked around the clock, conducting new surveys of the reef system. They documented every coral species, mapped fish populations, and collected data on water quality. Robert brought in additional experts to verify their findings, ensuring everything would stand up to legal scrutiny. But the developers weren't sitting idle. They launched a media campaign painting the project as vital for local economic development. Some news outlets began questioning Anna's credibility, digging into her past research and trying to find flaws. The pressure was intense. Anna barely slept, splitting her time between the lab and meetings with lawyers. One evening, as she stood on the facility's balcony watching the sunset, Robert found her looking exhausted. "You should get some rest," he said gently, handing her a cup of coffee. "I can't," she replied, taking a sip. "Every time I close my eyes, I see those bulldozers getting closer to the reef." Robert leaned against the railing beside her. "You know, when I started funding marine research, I thought money could solve any problem. But this fight has taught me something important. It's not about the money, it's about the people willing to stand up for what's right. Just then, Tom burst onto the balcony, waving his tablet excitedly. You need to see this. We found something. They rushed back to the lab, where the team had gathered around a microscope. Their latest samples had revealed a previously undocumented species of coral, one that showed remarkable resistance to warming waters. This could change everything, Anna breathed, studying the images. This species could be crucial for reef restoration worldwide. The discovery energized the team. They worked through the night, preparing a comprehensive report. The next morning, Anna presented their findings at an emergency hearing with the Coastal Development Board. Standing before the board members, Anna felt all her nervousness fade away. She wasn't just fighting for one reef anymore, she was fighting for the future of marine conservation. 3 months after that fateful hotel meeting, Anna stood in her new research facility, still amazed by how quickly everything had come together. The state-of-the-art lab was unlike anything she ever worked in, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and equipment that most marine biologists only dreamed about. But today, the excitement was overshadowed by tension. Her team had gathered around the conference table, studying satellite images of their research site. The resort developers had moved up their timeline, and construction equipment was already being positioned near the reef. They can't do this, said Tom, her assistant researcher, pointing to the images. Our environmental impact study clearly shows the damage it would cause. Anna rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. They're claiming our study is biased because of Robert's funding. They've hired their own experts who say the impact will be minimal. Just then, her phone buzzed with a message from Robert. Turn on the news, it read. The team huddled around the large screen as the local news anchor reported on a developing controversy over the resort development. The coverage showed protesters gathering at the site, holding signs about saving the reef. But what made Anna's heart sink was the developer's spokesperson, painting their research team as puppets of a billionaire trying to control coastal development. This is getting ugly, Anna murmured, just as Robert walked into the lab. He looked more serious than usual, his usual casual attire replaced by a formal suit. I just came from a meeting with the development company's board, he said, loosening his tie. They're not backing down. In fact, they're threatening to sue us for interfering with their project. The team exchanged worried glances, but Anna felt a surge of determination. Then we'll fight back. We have the science on our side. Robert nodded, pulling up some documents on the lab's main screen. I had my legal team prepare these. We're filing for an emergency injunction to stop construction while we conduct a more comprehensive study. But we need solid evidence and we need it fast. The next few weeks became a blur of activity. Anna's team worked around the clock, conducting new surveys of the reef system. They documented every coral species, mapped fish populations, and collected data on water quality. Robert brought in additional experts to verify their findings, ensuring everything would stand up to legal scrutiny. But the developers weren't sitting idle. They launched a media campaign painting the project as vital for local economic development. Some news outlets began questioning Anna's credibility, digging into her past research and trying to find flaws. The pressure was intense. Anna barely slept, splitting her time between the lab and meetings with lawyers. One evening, as she stood on the facility's balcony watching the sunset, Robert found her looking exhausted. You should get some rest, he said gently, handing her a cup of coffee. I can't, she replied, taking a sip. Every time I close my eyes, I see those bulldozers getting closer to the reef. Robert leaned against the railing beside her. You know, when I started funding marine research, I thought money could solve any problem. But this fight has taught me something important. It's not about the money, it's about the people willing to stand up for what's right. Just then, Tom burst onto the balcony, waving his tablet excitedly. You need to see this. We found something. They rushed back to the lab, where the team had gathered around a microscope. Their latest samples had revealed a previously undocumented species of coral, one that showed remarkable resistance to warming waters. This could change everything, Anna breathed, studying the images. This species could be crucial for reef restoration worldwide. The discovery energized the team. They worked through the night, preparing a comprehensive report. The next morning, Anna presented their findings at an emergency hearing with the Coastal Development Board. Standing before the board members, Anna felt all her nervousness fade away. She wasn't just fighting for one reef anymore, she was fighting for the future of marine conservation. This reef isn't just a barrier to development, she concluded her presentation. It's a living laboratory that could hold the key to saving coral reefs worldwide. Once it's destroyed, we can't get it back. The room was silent when she finished. Even the developer's lawyers looked uncomfortable. The board called for a recess to consider the new information. Hours later, Robert found Anna sitting in her lab, nervously checking her phone. "Any news?" he asked. Before she could answer, Tom burst in again, this time with tears of joy in his eyes. They approved the injunction. Construction is halted pending a full environmental review. The celebration that erupted in the lab was like nothing Anna had ever experienced. Her team hugged each other, crying and laughing at the same time. Robert stood back, watching with a proud smile. Later that evening, as the team shared a celebratory dinner, Anna raised her glass. "To all of you," she said, looking around at the faces of her colleagues, "we didn't just save a reef today. We proved that when science and determination come together, we can make a difference." Robert added his own toast, "and to accidental meetings that turn into extraordinary journeys." As Anna looked around at her team, at the facility they'd built, and at the ocean visible through the windows, she felt a profound sense of purpose. The fight wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead. But they had shown that standing up for what you believe in, backed by solid science and unwavering determination, could change the world. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, as if nature itself was celebrating their victory. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they had won their first major battle in the fight to save the oceans they all love so much. The discovery of the new heat-resistant coral species sent waves of excitement through the scientific community. Anna and her team worked tirelessly in their lab, running tests and documenting every aspect of this remarkable find. The coral didn't just survive in warmer waters, it seemed to thrive, offering hope for reef restoration in an era of climate change. Late one night, as Anna was reviewing data at her desk, Tom rushed in with alarming news. "Someone's been in the lab," he said, his voice shaking. "Files are missing from the secure server, and some of our samples have been tampered with." Anna's heart raced as she pulled up their digital records. Key research files had been accessed and copied just hours earlier. Security footage showed a cleaning crew entering the lab during off hours, but something wasn't right about their movements. "Call Robert," she said, already dialing security. Within an hour, the facility was swarming with investigators. Robert arrived looking worried, his casual attire suggesting he'd rushed straight from home. "Industrial espionage," the head of security confirmed. They were professionals, knew exactly what they were looking for. Anna felt sick. 6 months of careful research, potentially in the hands of competitors. But Robert remained calm. "We knew this might happen," he said. "That's why we had backup systems in place." He was right. While the thieves had accessed their main server, the team's most crucial data was stored in a separate secure system. Still, the breach shook everyone's confidence. The next morning, Anna received an email from a rival research institute. They claimed to have made the same coral discovery months ago and threatened to publish first, essentially stealing their findings. "They're bluffing," Tom said, examining the email. "Look at these images they sent. They're doctored versions of our own photos." But the threat was clear: publish quickly and messily, or risk losing credit for their discovery. Anna gathered her team for an emergency meeting. "We have 2 choices," she explained. "Rush to publish what we have, or take our time and do this right. What we found could change how we approach reef conservation worldwide. We can't let pressure compromise our science." The team unanimously chose integrity over speed. Robert supported their decision, providing additional security measures for the lab. They worked methodically, double-checking every finding, preparing for peer review. 2 weeks later, Anna was presenting their preliminary findings at a small scientific conference when she noticed something odd. A researcher from the rival institute was giving a presentation that sounded eerily familiar. "They're using our methodology," Tom whispered. "But their results don't make sense because they don't have the complete picture." Anna felt a mix of anger and vindication. The rival team had tried to replicate their work but missed crucial steps. Their results were inconsistent, and other scientists were starting to notice. That evening, Anna received an unexpected call from Dr. Chen, a respected marine biologist from the rival institute. "I need to apologize," she said. "I had no idea our data was stolen. I've launched an internal investigation." The next few days brought more revelations. The theft had been orchestrated by a junior researcher acting alone, hoping to make a name for himself. When confronted with evidence, he confessed. Robert organized a press conference where Anna could present their findings properly. Standing at the podium, facing reporters and fellow scientists, she felt surprisingly calm. "Today, we're not just announcing a scientific discovery," she began. "We're demonstrating the importance of ethical research. Our team chose the longer, harder path because that's what good science demands." The presentation was a triumph. Their research survived intense scrutiny and was published in a prestigious journal. But more importantly, it opened doors for collaboration with other institutions. Late one evening, as Anna wrapped up another long day in the lab, she found Robert standing by the reef observation window. "You know what impressed me most about all this?" he said, watching the fish swim by. "You never lost sight of what really mattered. When they tried to rush you, you stood firm." Anna smiled, remembering their first accidental meeting. "Science isn't about being first," she said. "It's about being right." The aftermath brought unexpected benefits. Their lab's reputation for integrity attracted top researchers from around the world. The stolen research attempt had actually strengthened their position in the scientific community. 1 year after the theft, Anna's team had expanded their research to multiple sites. The heat-resistant coral was successfully breeding in test locations, offering new hope for endangered reefs. During a team celebration dinner, Tom raised his glass to doing things the right way, even when it's hard. And to happy accidents, Robert added, smiling at Anna. "Sometimes the best discoveries come with unexpected challenges." Looking around at her team, Anna felt proud. They had faced theft, threats, and pressure, but emerged stronger. Their work was making a real difference, and they had done it without compromising their principles. The lab's lights dimmed automatically as the sun set, casting a gentle glow over the reef tanks. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they were ready. In science, as in life, the right path isn't always the easiest, but it's always worth taking. As Anna gathered her things to leave, she paused to watch a small group of the heat-resistant coral glowing softly in their tank. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come not from racing to be first, but from having the courage to do things right. As the morning sun sparkled off the Miami coastline, Anna sat in her office reading an email that could change everything. The European Institute of Marine Sciences was offering her a prestigious position, director of their new coral research division. The role came with a generous budget, a renowned research team, and access to some of the world's most advanced marine laboratories. Her hands trembled slightly as she reread the offer. Just 18 months ago, she had been running a small research lab on a shoestring budget. Now, after the success of their heat-resistant coral project, she was being courted by one of the world's top institutions. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Robert entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee, a morning ritual they'd developed over the past year. "You look deep in thought," he said, setting her cup down. "Everything okay?" Anna pushed her tablet across the desk, watching as Robert's expression changed while reading the email. His face remained neutral, but she noticed his grip on the coffee cup tightened slightly. "The European Institute," he said finally. "That's quite an opportunity." "It is," Anna agreed softly. "They want an answer within 2 weeks." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken words. Their work together had grown into something more than just a professional partnership. There was an ease, a natural rhythm to how they worked together. Robert understood her passion for the ocean in a way few others did. "You should take it," Robert said suddenly, his voice firm but gentle. "It's an incredible opportunity." Anna stood up and walked to the window, watching the waves roll in. "But what about everything we've built here? The research facility, our teams, the reef restoration project." "All of which will continue," Robert assured her. "The question is, where can you make the biggest difference?" The next few days were a blur of meetings and presentations. Anna's team was in the middle of a crucial phase of their research, studying how their heat-resistant coral species could help protect other marine life from climate change. During a late-night research session, Tom found her staring at live feeds from their reef cameras. "The team's talking about the offer," he said, sitting beside her. "We'll support whatever you decide, but we'd really miss you." Anna smiled sadly. "I'd miss all of this too. The European position is amazing, but it's not home," Tom finished. That word, home, struck a chord. When had this place, these people, become so much more than just a job? The following evening, Robert invited her to dinner at a quiet beachfront restaurant. As they watched the sunset, he asked, "Have you made your decision?" "I'm still weighing everything," Anna replied, tracing patterns in the condensation on her water glass. "The Institute has incredible resources, but we're doing groundbreaking work here too." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when I first met you, I thought funding your research would be a straightforward business decision. I never expected." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I never expected to find someone who shared my vision so completely." Anna felt her heart skip a beat. "I never expected any of this either. A year and a half ago, I was just trying to save one reef. Now we're developing techniques that could help coral reefs worldwide. And that's exactly why you should consider the European position," Robert said. "Your work deserves to reach the widest possible audience." But as he spoke, Anna realized something. The decision wasn't really about resources or prestige. It was about where she could make the most meaningful impact. The next morning, Anna called a team meeting. Standing before her colleagues, she felt a sudden clarity. "I've made my decision," she announced. "I'm staying." The relief in the room was palpable. Tom actually cheered, and several others broke into spontaneous applause. "The European Institute is amazing," Anna continued, "but what we're building here is special. We're not just doing research, we're creating a model for how science and private funding can work together to solve real problems." Later that day, she found Robert in his office, working on funding proposals for their next phase of research. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, looking up from his computer. "The European position is fantastic," Anna finished. "But this is where I belong. We're making real change here, Robert, and I'm not ready to walk away from that." A slow smile spread across his face. "In that case, I have some ideas for expanding our research scope. How do you feel about establishing a network of coral restoration sites across the Pacific?" As they began discussing the possibilities, Anna felt absolutely certain about her choice. Sometimes the biggest opportunities aren't the ones that look best on paper. They're the ones that feel right in your heart. That evening, as she walked along the beach near the research facility, Anna watched the sun sink into the ocean. A year and a half ago, she had accidentally walked into the wrong hotel room and found her future. Now she was choosing to stay, not because it was the safe choice or the prestigious choice, but because it was the right choice for her. The next morning, she would decline the European offer and throw herself into planning their Pacific expansion. But for now, she simply stood at the water's edge, listening to the waves, and knowing that sometimes the best decisions are the ones that bring you home. The early morning quiet of the research facility was shattered by blaring alarms. Anna jolted awake at her desk, where she'd fallen asleep reviewing data. The emergency lights were flashing, and her phone was buzzing with urgent alerts. "Chemical spill at the port." Tom's voice crackled through the facility's intercom. "It's heading straight for our reef nursery." Anna rushed to the monitoring station, her heart pounding. The screen showed a dark plume spreading through the water, creeping toward their research site. This was the nightmare scenario they had always feared but hoped would never happen. "How bad?" she demanded as her team gathered around the displays. "A cargo ship leaked industrial chemicals during a floating," Tom explained, pulling up satellite imagery. "The containment booms failed. We have maybe 2 hours before it reaches our coral beds." Years of research, including their precious heat-resistant coral specimens, were at risk. But more importantly, the natural reef they'd been working to protect was in danger. Anna hit the emergency response button, activating their crisis protocols. Within minutes, Robert burst through the door, still wearing his running clothes. He must have come straight from his morning jog. "I've got emergency response teams on the way," he said, quickly scanning the situation displays. but they won't get here fast enough to prevent the damage. Anna was already pulling on her diving gear. We need to save the core samples. Everything we've learned about heat resistance is in those specimens. It's too dangerous, Robert protested. The chemical levels are within emergency diving parameters. Anna finished checking her equipment. For the next hour at least. After that, the concentration will be too high. Her team moved with practiced efficiency, preparing emergency transport tanks for the coral specimens. They had drilled for this, but the reality was far more intense than any practice run. I'm going with you, Robert announced suddenly, reaching for a spare diving suit. Anna paused in surprise. You hate diving. You told me you were terrified of it. I am, he admitted, his hands shaking slightly as he checked the air tanks. But I'm not letting you do this alone. There was no time to argue. Within minutes, they were in the water, descending toward the research site. The visibility was still good, but they could see the dark chemical plume approaching in the distance. Working quickly, they began carefully removing the core samples from the nursery beds. Each specimen had to be handled delicately and placed in special containers to maintain the exact temperature and faith levels they needed to survive. Halfway through the operation, Anna's oxygen monitor beeped a warning. The chemical concentrations were rising faster than predicted. She signaled to Robert that they needed to speed up. As they worked, a school of fish darted past them in panic, fleeing the approaching contamination. The water was getting murky, making it harder to see the delicate coral formations. Suddenly, Anna's container slipped, threatening to crash into the reef bed. Robert lunged forward, catching it just in time, but his movement stirred up a cloud of sediment that temporarily blinded them both. When the water cleared, they saw the chemical plume was almost upon them. They had only minutes left before the levels would become dangerous. Just then, Anna noticed movement near the reef. A sea turtle was trapped in some debris, unable to escape the approaching chemicals. Without hesitation, she handed her container to Robert and swam toward it. Anna, no. Robert's voice crackled through the radio. We're out of time, but she couldn't leave the turtle to die. Working quickly, she freed it from the tangled fishing line. The turtle swam away just as the first tendrils of contaminated water reached them. Their eyes stinging even through their masks, they made their final ascent. By the time they reached the surface, emergency response vessels had arrived and were deploying additional containment measures. Back at the facility, as medical teams checked them over, Robert couldn't stop shaking. I've never been so scared, he admitted, when you went back for that turtle. I couldn't just leave it, Anna said softly. That's not who we are. A junior researcher interrupted them with amazing news. They had managed to save over 90% of their core samples. More importantly, the quick response had helped minimize damage to the natural reef. Later that evening, as cleanup crews worked to contain the spill, Anna found Robert standing by their observation window. He was watching the rescued coral specimens in their emergency tanks, glowing softly in the dim light. You know what I realized today? He said without turning around. Watching you dive back for that turtle, it reminded me why I fell in love with this work. With all of it. Anna stood beside him, their shoulders barely touching. Even the scary parts. Especially the scary parts, he smiled. Because that's when it matters most. The facility hummed with activity as teams monitored the rescued specimens and coordinated with environmental agencies. They had a long night ahead, but they had saved something precious. As the adrenaline of the day finally began to fade, Anna looked at their reflection in the tank glass, two people who had found each other through a chance encounter and built something remarkable together. Thank you for diving with me today, she said quietly. Robert took her hand, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching their rescued corals glow like stars in the darkness. Sometimes the biggest tests reveal not just what we're willing to fight for, but who we want beside us in the battle. In the bright morning sunlight, Anna stood at the podium, looking out at the gathered crowd. 1 year had passed since the chemical spill incident, and today marked the official launch of the Lin Chen Marine Conservation Foundation. The audience was filled with scientists, environmentalists, and supporters from around the world. 2 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, I accidentally walked into the wrong hotel room. That mistake changed not just my life, but potentially the future of our oceans. She glanced at Robert, who sat in the front row, smiling proudly. The The past year had been transformative for both of them. After the chemical spill, they had realized that their work needed to expand beyond a single research facility. Today, we're not just opening a foundation, Anna continued. We're launching the world's largest private marine research network. 10 facilities across 3 continents, all working together to protect and restore our ocean ecosystems. The screens behind her showed live feeds from their various research sites, coral nurseries in the Pacific, rehabilitation centers in the Caribbean, and research stations along coastlines worldwide. Each facility was staffed with passionate scientists and equipped with cutting-edge technology. Tom, now the director of their Pacific operations, stood up to present the network's first-year goals. Our heat-resistant coral species has already been successfully transplanted to test sites in 5 different regions, he announced. Early results show a survival rate of over 80%. As Anna watched her colleague present, she remembered the long journey that had brought them here. The accidental meeting, the fight against developers, the stolen research, her decision to stay instead of going to Europe, and that terrifying day of the chemical spill. Each challenge had only made their vision stronger. Robert took the stage next, his casual confidence filling the room. When I first started funding marine research, people called it a billionaire's hobby, he admitted. But what we've created here is so much more. It's a model for how private funding and scientific research can work together to solve global problems. The foundation's structure was unique, combining Robert's business acumen with Anna's scientific expertise. Every facility would operate independently but share resources and data through a central network. They had already attracted partnerships with major universities and research institutions worldwide. After the formal presentations, Anna mingled with the guests, answering questions and discussing future collaborations. A young marine biology student approached her shyly. Dr. Lin, the student said, "Your story inspired me to switch my focus to coral research. Do you really think we can save the reefs?" Anna smiled, remembering how she had once asked similar questions. "We have to try," she replied. "And now we have the resources and the team to make a real difference." Later that evening, the core team gathered for a private celebration on the facility's roof deck. The Miami skyline glittered in the distance as they shared stories and dreams for the future. "Remember when we could barely afford new test tubes?" Tom laughed, raising his glass. "Now we're coordinating research across 3 continents." Robert wrapped an arm around Anna's shoulders as they watched the sunset. "Having second thoughts about turning down that position in Europe?" he teased. "Never," she replied firmly. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." The next morning, Anna arrived early at the lab, just as she had every day for the past 2 years. But today felt different. The facility buzzed with new energy as researchers from around the world began their collaborations. She stopped by the observation window, where it had all started. The rescued coral from the chemical spill had not just survived, it had thrived, providing valuable data about resilience and adaptation. Robert found her there, carrying their usual morning coffee. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked, handing her a cup. Anna took a sip, watching the colorful fish swim through their restored reef. "You know what I love most about what we've built?" she said thoughtfully. "It's not just about the science anymore. We're showing people that it's never too late to make a difference." The Foundation's launch marked more than just a new organization, it represented hope. Hope that with the right combination of science, resources, and determination, they could protect the oceans for future generations. As new team members arrived for their first day, Anna and Robert gave them a tour of the facility. Each lab, each tank, each piece of equipment told part of their story. A story that began with a simple mistake and grew into something extraordinary. "Welcome to the family," Anna told the newcomers, gesturing to the vast facility around them. "Together, we're going to change the world." And as she looked at their excited faces, she knew it was true. Sometimes the biggest scientific discoveries come with unexpected personal ones, and sometimes the most important journeys begin with a wrong turn that turns out to be exactly right. The Miami sun sparkled off the ocean waves as another day of research began, full of possibility and promise. Their story was still being written, but its message was already clear. When passion meets purpose, amazing things can happen.